And I'm all in for President Trump. I think I expect he'll be our nominee. Yeah.
Here's something that tells you a lot about Donald Trump. The people sounding the alarm the loudest about him are the people who have worked most closely with him. That's always a bad sign. I know you've been reluctant to say who you're going to vote for, but are you leaving the door open to voting for Joe Biden if it's between the two of them?
I will say my door is completely shut to voting for Donald Trump. And the only reason that I will not endorse a candidate right now is because I still am hopeful that Donald Trump does not end up being the nominee next year. I think our country will be in a much better place overall, not just for myself, but the ticket and the future of our country will be. But what I will say too, though, is I think everybody should vote for Joe Biden if they want our democracy to survive.
Oh, that's gonna hurt!
There are some who escape the cult, some who don't.
Never surrender to the tyranny.
What is Trump doing here on this shirt?
This is his mugshot.
Gotcha. So that was taken when he surrendered to authorities to have his picture taken.
Huh?
And unfortunately for us, some who don't escape but instead are just 2 heartbeats away from the presidency. But onto the lucky few who have since turned away from the extreme MAGA crowd. Admittedly, this trend only seems to pick up steam after said fascist has left office and not while he was signing their checks. But hey, welcome back to reality nonetheless. Former Trump aide Cassidy Hutchinson, a self-described constitutional conservative, went on MSNBC this week to chat with Jen Psaki about the upcoming election and where her allegiance lies. And following suit with the likes of Bill Barr, Mike Pence, James Mattis, Mark Esper, Rex Tillerson, Chris Christie, and many more, she distanced herself from the former president.
And today, the Washington Post reported on the frustration among many former Trump aides who have been trying to warn voters about the dangers of electing him again. Cassidy Hutchinson just mentioned this story, and I want to just drill down on it because it's such an interesting one people should read. Josh Jossi writes in that story, quote, "So far, Trump has surged toward the GOP nomination. Even as former aides critical of him have blanketed the airwaves, giving scathing speeches, testifying on camera in front of congressional committees, and penning books, shaking off the kinds of condemnations that could mortally wound another politician and almost any other presidential year." This story has so much in it, including it quotes Trump's former White House chief of staff, John Kelly, who, of course, had the same job that your former boss, Mark Meadows, had. And Kelly said in this story, I'm going to read it, "What's going on in the country that a single person thinks that this guy would be still a good president when he said the things he said and done the things he's done. It's beyond my comprehension." Do you have similar feelings of surprise of the level of support Trump still has out there?
I do and I don't. You know, there is a massive constituency of Trump voters that were never going to change their minds. I think that it is sad that we haven't changed a larger swath of the population's minds, and we have to think about that as we approach the election in 2024. Donald Trump showed us who he was in 2016 when he went down the escalator in Trump Tower in New York City. I admit that I was blinded to a lot of his faults. You know, I write a lot in my book. My book is full of unflattering truths and things that I wish that I could change about my past. But I think what's important now is that I have the role that I have the hindsight that I have, and I want to be able to continue calling attention to this. With the hindsight that I have, there's no reason that he should have been elected in 2016. There's no reason that the election in 2020 should have been close, and that's coming from somebody who worked for him until January 20th, 2021. It wasn't really until, you know, I went through the trials with the committee the first few times and eventually switched legal counsel from Trump-funded legal counsel to my own independent legal counsel. And it wasn't really until I retained my own independent legal counsel when I was finally free of everything Trump world where my horizon began to open and I felt that I wasn't being talked at. I see it clearly. I see that he is a dangerous man. I see that he has severe character flaws, but those character flaws go one step further.
But unlike Mattis, Bolton, etc., she said something that many of them are unwilling or perhaps just too scared to say, that even as a conservative, if it comes down to the orange one being the GOP nominee, well, she'll be going dark branded.
Who do we elect that we can put in the Oval Office that has the character, integrity, and grit to be able to carry our country through this moment in time? And that person isn't Donald Trump.
Well, as you've said, he's likely the nominee. I know you've been reluctant to say who you're going to vote for, but are you leaving the door open to voting for Joe Biden if it's between the two of them?
I will say my door is completely shut to voting for Donald Trump. And the only reason that I will not endorse a candidate right now is because I still am hopeful that Donald Trump does not end up being the nominee next year. I think our country will be in a much better place overall, not just for myself, but the ticket and the future of our country will be. But what I will say too, though, is I think everybody should vote for Joe Biden if they want our democracy to survive.
Now, as I alluded to earlier, Hutchinson falls in line behind an abundance of former Trump aides who have lambasted their former boss and shared detailed insight into his sheer incompetence while in office.
I was clear on that throughout. I was clear with President Trump throughout, all the way up to the morning of January 6th. But let's be clear on this point. It wasn't just that they asked for a pause. The president specifically asked me, and his gaggle of crackpot lawyers asked me to literally reject votes, which would have resulted in the issue being turned over to the House of Representatives.
So, now we can't forget here that this entire thing came about because of reckless conduct of the president. If he had just turned over the documents, which I think every other person in the country would have done, they're the government's documents. They're official records. They're not his personal records. Battle plans for an attack on another country or Defense Department documents about our capabilities are in no universe Donald J. Trump's personal documents. They are the government's documents.
I know, who would have thought that the man who once asked his medical advisor during a press conference on COVID whether she would look into injecting bleach directly into the body would rack up some tough workplace relationships.
And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do, either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that too. Sounds interesting. Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number of the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with, but it sounds interesting to me.
But we know this about Trump. I mean, look at his comments about anyone while they're doing exactly what he says. I mean, he's dishing out compliments left and right. He's their best friend. But as soon as they dare question whether windmills really are killing whales, it's off with their head.
I now know Washington probably better than anybody. I know the good ones and the bad ones, and we will have really great, strong people. I already know who they are, but we will have really great, strong people.
Okay. In 2016, you said that. I'm going to surround myself with only the best and most serious people.
Well, I did do that.
This
and we
time,
had tremendous, look, we had the best economy we've ever had. The world has ever seen.
Your Vice President, Mike Pence, is running against you.
Yeah.
Your Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, she's running against you. Your former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, said he's not supporting you. You mentioned National Security Advisor John Bolton. He's not supporting you either. You mentioned Attorney General Bill Barr, says you shouldn't be president again, calls you the consummate narcissist and troubled man. You recently called Barr a gutless pig. Your second defense secretary is not supporting you, called you irresponsible. This week, you and your White House called your White House Chief of Staff, John Kelly, weak and ineffective and born with a very small brain. You called your acting White House Chief of Staff, Mick Mulvaney, a born loser. You called your first Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, dumb as a rock. And your first Defense Secretary, James Mattis, the world's most overrated general. You called your White House Press Secretary, Kayleigh Kennedy, milquetoast. And multiple times you've referred to your Transportation Secretary, Elaine Chao, as Mitch McConnell's China-loving wife. So, why did you hire all of them in the first place?
Now, I won't be rushing to the site formerly known as Twitter to share my praise of those who came to their senses while conveniently promoting their new book in the post-MAGA era. But with 2024 around the corner, I do believe hearing from those who are conservative but feel abandoned by their political party is important because it further demonstrates what is happening across the country. People are rejecting the extremism that has become the lifeblood of the GOP. See this past election, despite the polls predicting doom and gloom, for example.
I think we should progress a bill that protects life, and I just wanted to make sure people understand what we would deliver.
In Virginia, CNN projects Democrats will gain full control of the state legislature and a major setback for Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin in Virginia, who had been pushing to restrict abortions.
He lost both. What an epic failure by Governor Youngkin.
No abortion ban. I mean, I think that's what the voters said.
Americans said once again, it's time to reap what you wrote.
I did something that nobody thought was possible. I got rid of Roe v. Wade.
I will say my door is completely shut to voting for Donald Trump.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.